The parsha begins where Yitzchak and Rivka are praying for a child because Rivka is akora. She's barren. And the Torah uses a term for prayer, the tefillah, vayetar. Rashi explains the expression of vayetar, which means pray. It indicates it was very powerful expression of tefillah. And the Midrash Chazal at the beginning of Parshas Veschanan tells us there are 10 expressions of tefillah. 10. Vayetar isn't one of those 10 expressions, and it's a very powerful expression. Doesn't mean the person prays stronger, but evidently one resorts to certain expressions which activate forces at a more advanced level. That's vayetar. So the Gemara tells us, why is this expression referred to as yetar? So the Gemara answers that, explains that the word atar means a pitchfork. A pitchfork. And a farmer, when he uses a pitchfork, what does he use a pitchfork for? He turns things, goes to the hay, and he turns the hay upside down. It's a implement, a farm implement, which takes what's below and turns it upside down. Identically, the expression of vayetar, which is a very powerful expression of tefillah, of prayer, it's mahapich midas ha'achzorius lemidas harachmim. It overturns the attribute of cruelty to the attribute of mercy. Those are the words of the Gemara. Midas ha'achzorius. In Hebrew, achzor means a cruel person. Achzorius means the attribute of cruelty to the attribute of mercy. So it's evident and clear. God forbid, there's no such thing as attribute of cruelty. Hashem is not cruel. So if that's the case, what does the Gemara use the term, the attribute of cruelty to the attribute of mercy? Midas adin, the attribute of justice, because of its exactness, it may be perceived as cruelty. As people say, it seems to be too much. I only spoke Lashon Hara. Why is God reacting so strongly? I only violated the Shabbos. Why is God reacting so strongly at this extreme level? If a person would understand the ramifications of disruption of the spirituality of a person, he would understand this is a natural consequence of that kind of behavior. I always give the example. A person takes a tiny, tiny trace of cyanide, God forbid, and he puts it in his mouth for a moment. All systems shut down immediately, the person dies. A person who doesn't know anything about pharmacology and understanding the innate toxin poison of that particular powder doesn't understand why it should happen so quickly. Instantaneously, the person dies. But if you understand why the death is instantaneously. So it's only because a person doesn't understand the makeup of whatever that is, therefore, the person sees it in a way where it's beyond, it's something that doesn't make any sense. If a person would understand when a person sins and crosses lines that God says you're not permitted to cross those lines, the only reason why under normal circumstances, there isn't that reaction from Hashem is because that's midas harachmim. That's the attribute of mercy. Hashem is willing to hold it in abeyance. He's willing to give you endless chances before he rains in on you. But for whatever reason, Hashem wants to give the exactness of the consequence of that action. It's extreme beyond, because then you have the brunt of actually what you created, this negative force. So the reason why we refer to it as the attribute of cruelty is due to our lack of understanding of the innate makeup of the negative force which we create through our misbehavior. We see it's too extreme. So if so extreme, why is Hashem doing it? Therefore, it's stated as the attribute of cruelty. Chas v'sholom. There's no such thing as cruelty. Hashem is what? Is mishpat, is justice. Moshe says, Hatzur Tom and Polo. The rock, his actions are perfect. There's no iniquity in his justice. So it means that whenever there's midas adin, which is perceived incorrectly, and because of that incorrect understanding of the attribute of justice, we see it as cruelty. The strong expression of tefillah overturns the midas din to midas harachmim. The way the pitchfork, the farmer uses it to turn something that's below to turn it upside down. That's the power of what? Of a yetar, the power of tefillah. So although Rivki Mena was an akora, she was barren, because they both used, Yitzchok and Rivka, they both used the term of a yetar, similar to the pitchfork. Therefore, it says Hashem responded to that expression of tefillah. The Yetzelo, Hashem responded. That's the understanding. Just to fast forward just a little bit. We left off yesterday at Chof Ches. After they're born, after they reach adolescence, it says Esav becomes a hunter, expert hunter. Yaakov is Ishtam Yeshegolim. He's the man who is complete, perfect. He has no negative characteristics, and he's committed to Torah study. He's committed to dwell in the tent of Shem and Aver. He's the patriarch who personifies Torah. That's Yaakov Vino. The Yev Yitzchok is Esav Kitzai B'fiv. That's where we left off yesterday. Yitzchok loved Esav because Tzai B'fiv. Only because Rashi offered two interpretations from the Midrash. Either because he was a hunter and he would provide the food for Yitzchok, literally putting the food, what he caught, what he trapped in his mouth, or he actually, through his glib falseness, he actually misled him to believe that he was a tzaddik, and because he believed he was this exceptional tzaddik, therefore he loved him. So I pointed out yesterday, normally a father has a natural liking or preference and favors a firstborn. But the Torah tells us no. It wasn't only because it was his firstborn. His firstborn alone, if he would have seen his true color, he would have despised him. It's only because it was Tzai B'fiv, because either he put the food in his mouth, he provided all his needs, either that. So that's, we said, as the mention that was shochad. It's like when you give, regardless of the dimension of a judge, his integrity and his quality of person, the moment he accepts any level of favor from any defendant, the judge naturally, as a human being, loses his impartiality. He's disqualified as a judge. Yitzchok, as great as he was, because Esav had put the food in his mouth, as we'll explain, therefore this caused this conflict of interest at whatever level of bribery. Therefore, he wasn't able to see the subtleties of his behavior. That's the understanding. Because the Torah says, "Hashochad yaver einei chachomim, v'salv divri tzadikim." It blinds the eyes of the wise, and it causes the tzadikim to be off track. This includes Moshe Rabbeinu. If Moshe Rabbeinu would accept any favor, as great as Moshe Rabbeinu was, he'd be disqualified from being a judge. Yitzchok, because he's some Tzai B'fiv, that's the equivalent of bribery, and he had this conflict. Therefore, he didn't see the failings, the shortcomings of Esav. The other is he spoke in the most glib way to mislead him, to show he's pious beyond pious. Therefore, that's the reason why he misled him. And he had that ability. He had that guile that he was able to mislead his father. Okay? So I pointed out yesterday, and we finished it at the very end, that the partnership between Yisachar and Zvulun was arranged by Yaakov Vinu. Yaakov says, Yisachar is the tribe that's committed to Torah study, only Torah study. And they have the ability to have a level of clarity of one of a kind. However, they're not able to achieve that level of ability, that clarity of Torah, if there's any degree of distraction. If there's any degree of distraction, will mean that even if they have to tend to their material needs, they will not be able to reach that level of clarity. And he understood that Zvulun, of all the other sons, was able to be the provider, not only to be the provider, but because Zvulun, in terms of value Torah to such a degree, he would see it as a privilege, more than all the others, that he would be involved in the material support of Yisachar, and he would understand he'd have a level of commitment. And as the Midrash says, Yisachar did not have to worry about any material need, ever. Even putting the food on the table, Yisachar, Zvulun provided that, and it uses the term, he would put the food in his mouth to that degree. He was so committed and he revered Torah to such a degree, and he valued it, he would not allow Yisachar to even spend a moment to be concerned about the material. And the words of Chazal is, "Hayasam ochel b'fiv." He literally would put the food in his mouth. To that degree, Yisachar had nothing to worry about. So what I'm saying is, Yitzhak is a patriarch. His mind is occupied in spirituality. But as a human being, if he has to attend to his material needs, that is a compromise, and that infringes on his spirituality. He's not able to reach his potential. Esav, that he was side defiv, he could put the food literally in his mouth. That was the degree that he was committed to provide for his father. Automatically, that caused even a greater conflict of interest. In terms of convincing Yitzhak or misleading Yitzhak that he believed that Esav valued the spirituality of his father to such a degree, it's not he just provided. It was side defiv. He put the food in his mouth to such a degree that he reveres Torah and spirituality to such a degree, he would not allow Yitzchak to be distracted as much as a moment from Torah. So it's similar to the second interpretation. It's not only the shochad. It's the way he provided in a way as if he reveres Torah more than anybody. Similar as Zvulun revered the Torah of Yisachar. And that's why Yaakov chose him to be the provider. As a result of that, what does it say about Esav? He values Torah at a level which is unheard of. Therefore, later we're going to see why did he want to give the birthright, the blessing, the material blessing to Esav? Because he believed, of course, he knew Yaakov, spiritually speaking, is much more advanced. He's a man who studies Torah day and night without distraction. But since as Esav provides for his father, that he values his spirituality to such a degree, he puts the food in his mouth, similar to his woman putting the food in Yisachar's mouth. If that's the case, he's the proper provider. So Yitzchak wanted to create a relationship, a partnership. Yaakov is the Yisachar, Esav is the Zvulun. It'd be a perfect partnership. As Yaakov created that partnership because he understood to what degree he revered Torah, Zvulun, that he be that ultimate provider, which the others weren't able to be that kind of provider. Therefore, he believed Esav would be the provider for Yaakov, but he didn't know the man was a monster. That if he had control of those purse strings, he would strangle and he would destroy Yaakov. That was part of his guile. So there's something in both. Either piv means he glib-lipped him and he deceived him, displaying this extreme level of piety. He asked him, do you have to tithe salt? Do you have to tithe straw? All that. And Yitzchak thought he's really very unbelievably. And he explained to him, no, it's not necessary. That means Esav, the way he presented himself, he assumed every chumrah. Every conceivable chumrah he wanted to assume. Yaakov says no. He says, he's really something special. So that's deceiving. Here, through the way he provided, through that, it displayed a certain reverence or value of Torah, of spirituality. Therefore, he says, this confirms he is the proper Zvulun, and he will be the provider for Yaakov. But Rivka understood differently. As it says, Rivka oheves as Yaakov, because Rivka knew the truth. And she understood because Shem already had explained to her through the divine communication, through the prophecy, that Yaakov is the representation of good and Esav is the representation of evil. And later, when it comes to take the brachos, when they were 63 years old, and Yitzchak summons Esav to take the bracha, immediately she summons Yaakov, she says, you must go immediately. So he says, I'm concerned. What happens if my father should realize it's me and not my brother? The curse will come upon him, curse me. He says, I take responsibility. So the Targum Onkelos says over there, what I'm telling you now is through divine communication, God is saying you must go right now. That's what she meant. I take responsibility. I take responsibility because I had the nevuah. I had the prophecy that now's the time to go. So that was the confirmation that under no circumstance is Esav going to be the provider, but rather he'd be the one, as we said, by cutting off all the provisions, Yaakov would just wither and just die. That's the reason why Yaakov had to be in control of the purse strings. You couldn't allow the purse strings to be in control of a person like Esav, because he represented everything which was the antithesis of whatever Yaakov represented. Find that when Avram was told that Hashem would destroy Sodom, what was Avram's concern? If you read Rashi, Avram was concerned it was Chil Hashem. If God destroys Sodom, it will be a desecration of his name. Why? Because people will say that just as he destroyed the generation of the great flood, is it possible no tzaddikim there? When God destroys, he destroys the good and evil in one swoop. He doesn't discern between the good and the bad. The Dor HaFloga, the generation of the dispersion also, it says a third were killed, a third were dispersed, and the other third, whatever. They were converted into apes. Though they became apes, they went from man to ape, the other third. God, whenever he reacts, it's the good and bad, tzaddik, Russia, they all go together. So he said, now he's going to destroy Sodom. Chalilah, he used the term Chalilaloch. God forbid you should what? Lahom is tzaddik in Russia. People are going to say that you're killing the tzaddik together with the Russia. So what was Avram's concern? The perception, the world perception that they see Hashem in a light, even the tzaddik he takes when he takes the Russia. That's a chil Hashem. But factually speaking, when there's midas adin, the attribute of justice is in force. Nobody can be perfect enough that and one doesn't merit mercy. So even the tzaddik, if he's not perfect enough, he succumbs to the midas adin. But factually, since people don't understand that, as we said, it's all a misperception, not understanding the consequences of sin. Therefore, they say this is too much. Therefore, they say this is not justice. This is beyond. This is injustice. This is inequity. That was Avram's concern when he went and he said maybe 50 tzaddikim, 45 tzaddikim, until he came to the realization Hashem said there are no tzaddikim. Therefore, there will not be a chil Hashem. And it was proven at the end because it says, when the angels were there, it says every member of the Sodom community surrounded the house. It says, Minar Vadzoke, from the youngest to the oldest, to wanted to sodomize the guests of Lot, which was a public confirmation that all these people in Sodom, they were all evil people. As a result of that, it's beyond any question, it will not be a chil Hashem, because it'll be proven to the world that these people are all truly evil.